So in today's lesson, we're going to be looking at inventions and innovations. So basically, the new creative ideas that we use to possibly start new businesses as entrepreneurs. So to start off with, is it an invention? Most people have heard the word invention or inventor before. However, the word does get used quite loosely in the English language. And we need to make sure that, especially for business, we fully understand what the word truly means. So in this picture, you can see Alexander Graham Bell using the telephone that he and his team created to make the first ever telephone call. So is it an invention? Yes, it is. And let's look at what makes something an invention. So an invention is the creation of something new. And that is the key. It needs to be something brand new. The word originates from the Latin word that means to come up with. Okay, and it's important to know that some inventions happen by accident. Okay, a lot of people call it like a flash of genius. You just have an idea, but other ones do take time, and people are looking for solutions to problems that they currently have. Okay, and we're going to look at that a little bit more. But the important thing about an invention is it's something new that didn't exist before. Okay, so some of the examples you can see here: Velcro, the game of basketball, the internet. Okay, these were all brand new ideas that were created for the world and now serve a purpose to us, and they are therefore inventions. So, the inventions, again, are the formulation of new ideas to create products or processes. Okay, they are constructed using your imagination. So this is really the key here. You're not really using things that already existed. You're not making an improvement to something that's already there. You are literally coming up with something brand new. Okay, and you heard me mention before that the term of an inventor, okay, that is simply the person who creates a new idea, process, product, or service, any sort of invention. Okay, the important thing to remember is that not all inventors are entrepreneurs, and not all inventors are the people who actually bring this product to customers. Often ideas come and then they are developed by other people. So the inventor is that first initial idea. Okay. Also, it's important to remember that not all inventions will be implemented because there isn't always a need for them. Okay, so oftentimes as children or as young adults, people have a much more creative and free flowing brain and ideas, and they're going to come up with some interesting things. An example I give is when I was younger, I was selling Girl Guide cookies. We used to go door to door to do that, and it was wintertime, and my pen kept freezing and customers couldn't use it. So I went home and came up with an idea to have a pen that had antifreeze in it, so my pen could never freeze. This is technically an invention. As far as I know, that did not exist at the time. However, very quickly, when I was telling my mom about it, she looked me square in the eyes and just said, well, why don't you just use a pencil? Because it won't freeze. And that's when I realized, just because it's a new idea and it doesn't exist, there may be a reason why it doesn't exist. Okay, there's not always an application or value in having that. So while it can be easier to come up with ideas, they're not all going to be implemented. And that's really the difference here. We have inventions and inventors, but that doesn't mean that all of those ideas become actual products. So we talked about how Alexander Graham Bell's telephone was an invention. It was brand new. Telephones did not exist at that time. Okay, so what about Steve Jobs' iPhone? Okay, when the iPhone came out, it was considered an invention. It was, brand new at the time. We'd never had a phone that could also do all of these other things that we now call a smartphone. Okay. However, was it an invention? If we look back to our definition of it, an invention needing to be something brand new, this does not qualify. It is not an invention. Telephones existed before. It's not brand new. All that was done is that there was some creativity involved. There was new ideas to improve something that already existed. And this is what we call an innovation. Okay, an innovation is a change to something that already exists. And this is really important. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you Google and say, give me a list of inventions, you are going to get a number of innovations in there. Most people in the general use, anything that's new are going to call it an invention. So it's important that you understand the difference when you're looking at business. Remember, an invention is something that's brand new, whereas an innovation is when we change something that already exists. So we have TVs and somebody made them 3D, or somebody made them 5K, or somebody made them bigger. Okay, these are innovations. An example here, Heinz ketchup at one point came out with colored ketchup, purple and green ketchup. It's still ketchup, it was just changed, so it's an innovation. And of course, the example I've just given with the phones, the progression of cell phones, okay, a cell phone already existed, it got smaller, it got more features, it became smart, it became touchscreen, okay? Those would be changes and those would be innovations. So there are four main types of innovations, or really kind of places that innovations come from. Okay, so innovations often happen when we're trying to make a new product that improves the quality or decreases the price of an existing product or service. So it's important to know that an innovation can look very, very similar to the initial one. Okay, we see this happening in cars all of the time. You have the Honda Civic, and then the next model of the Honda Civic comes out. It's basically the same, but they've just added a few features or increased the quality, or in some cases decreased the price. When we see, for example, the generic version of medication coming out, it's the exact same medication, but it's offered by a different brand at a lower price. This is still an innovation. Okay, the next one could be the implementation of a system or resource that differentiates an existing product or service. Okay, so this is actually not changing the product or service, but adding something to it that makes it different. Okay, an outside, so a service that comes with it. So taking, for example, the grocery store and now having where you can order online and they collect it for you, that is an innovation. That is a new thing that's been added to it. The next one could be the introduction of new systems that increase productivity and decision making. So we often see innovation happening not necessarily on the product or service that is going out to the customer, but actually in the process of making it. So all these improvements in animation, in production to be more productive, okay, and the decision making of things within a business, those could be innovations as well. And also, we could see new sources of raw materials or partly manufactured product or alternative materials, okay? So looking at different ways to make things that we already have. We see lots of people, trying to make building supplies out of, old plastic water bottles or different things like that. These would all be innovation. Yes, drywall already existed, but if we're making it out of something different, that would be an innovation. So you may wonder kind of where inventions and innovations come from. We know that inventions, are usually an aha moment or somebody trying to solve another problem. Innovations, they come from a lot of what ifs, okay? If you're trying to come up with an innovation or an idea as an entrepreneur for a business, you need to ask yourself a lot of questions, okay? You're starting with an existing product or service, and you're thinking, what if I shrank it, made it bigger, made it lighter, changed the shape, reversed it, added something, subtracted something, sold it at a different place or in a different way, changed its name. Remember, an innovation is any sort of change that you do to a product that makes it more appealing to a customer. Okay, so those are the two main types of ideas, either an invention or an innovation, and it's important to know the difference between them. So to ensure that we understand the difference, we're going to go through a few examples and make sure that we know how to kind of think about making these decisions of if something and understanding if something is an invention or an innovation. So the first one is silly putty. Okay, so if you are not aware, a man by the name of James Wright basically mixed a bunch of chemicals together, and the result was this stretchy and bouncy material. It was too stretchy to work as a rubber substitute, which is what they were kind of originally trying to create. Okay. But then a friend of his who was in advertising suggested a different form of packaging and marketing it towards children and calling it silly putty. So is that an invention or an innovation? The key here is that we hear that they were mixing a bunch of chemicals together and came out with a new material that was stretchy and bouncy. Okay. That concept there, this is something that's brand new, which makes this an invention. Another example would be a goalie mask. Okay, so I'm going to say it wrong, and I apologize to the hockey fans out there, but Jacques Plante, I believe it is, was a goalie in the NHL, and he was very concerned about the injuries that goalies suffered when they were hit in the face with a puck. If you can imagine being a goalie in the NHL with no protection of your face. Okay, so he worked with Fiberglass Canada to develop the first ever goalie mask. Okay, so in this situation, goalies never wore masks before, and so this was the first time that this was happening. So it is new, and so it would be an invention. However, I have had students in the past argue that masks did exist for other purposes and that they were merely changed in order for them to be here, which might make them an innovation. So there is a little bit of that gray area, especially as we get on and more items exist again. Again, when we're looking at this specific example, we can look at the fact that he didn't take an existing mask and change it. He went about making a specific mask for this, and which is what makes it that innovation. The next example is chocolate chip cookies. So, Ruth Wakefield was an owner of an inn, and she was making chocolate cookies. Okay, so the point was that the whole cookie was chocolate. But instead of using melted chocolate, which she normally does, she just broke up the chocolate bar and tossed the pieces in, assuming that they would melt, and she wouldn't have to do the extra work. However, they didn't melt, they were chunks, but the customers loved the results, and that is how chocolate chip cookies were created. Okay, so again, when we look at this, we look at that story in general, we hear she was making cookies. Cookies already existed, and something changed about them that made her discover this new one. So that definition right there makes this an innovation, and a very tasty one at that. Next is windshield wipers. Okay, so until 1903, people drove around with nothing on their windows. If it rained, they had to stop because they couldn't see. If something got on, they had to pull over and fix it. Okay, this was until Mary Anderson of Alabama decided to create the first windshield wipers for cars. They obviously didn't look like the ones in the picture. These are what we have now. Okay, but she created something like that worked automatically on the car, and obviously we are still using them today. So, invention or innovation. Again, we're looking at this. Nothing existed, and she created something new, which makes it an invention. So that is our inventions and innovations.
Thank you so much for watching today's lesson, brought to you by Plugin to Learning. All the resources used in this video are linked in the description below. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. And to continue learning with us, please subscribe.